Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. In this episode, I talked to two individuals, one about their encounter in remote Montana and the other about their remote encounter around Coos Bay, Oregon. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Cathy tonight. Cathy is a listener, and she contacted me regarding some things that have happened to her over the years. I'm going to go ahead and give it right over to Cathy, but thank you so much for sharing tonight, Cathy.
You're very welcome, Jeremiah. I appreciate you having a platform that allows somebody like me who's never talked about this to actually have the opportunity to say something and, just kind of validate what I went through, So thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I feel it's very, very important to be able to give people a platform where they feel validated, safe to speak about things without feeling like they're going to get ridiculed. But so, Cathy, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I'll go ahead and let you take it from here.
Okay. Well, I guess the first thing to say is I was born and raised in Montana. 43 years of my life I spent from east to west, north to south, literally 400 miles as the crow flies east to west and 300 north to south. I've been all across Montana, living in different places, working in different places. And kind of early in my life, I ended up in a little tiny town called Pony, and that's at the base of Holotop Mountain in the Tobacco Root Mountains. Okay. This is in the middle of nowhere. 80 some people was the actual amount of people that lived in that town. So I was there in about 98 or 99. Okay. And I traveled the same road back and forth to both of my jobs there every single day, except for one day a week, basically. And just one of these drives, I just noticed this huge monstrous bull moose had come down into the coulee right by this road, because it runs by this creek that feeds the whole coulee. So that stays green all year long, whether there's no water anywhere else. That spot's got water and green. So he showed up there. And so I just started paying attention because the guy kept being there and kept being there. And so one night I got home from work, and the other half was at the house. And I said, hey, that moose, it's not dark yet, and that moose is right out there. Let's go take a look. I'll show you, because he wanted to see him. So we jump in a Pontiac car and go driving down the road. And it's getting like half dark. You could see shapes and stuff, but you couldn't really see a lot of definition. So we went down there and we're looking for him, and could not see this moose. And I had just passed him like 20 minutes earlier, and he was just gone. And so I was like, well, maybe tomorrow I'll see him on the way in. And the next day on the way to work, I saw horns is what I saw. Actually, I slowed down and I was really looking, and all I saw was like these horns kind of popped up from the grass. I went, oh no, somebody shot that moose. That's the first thing I thought, is somebody had poached that moose and just shot it. And anyway, I went to work and I felt awful, but I went back home, told the other half again, I know what happened to that moose. Somebody probably shot it. And he was rather upset about that. But so we get in the car again and go down there. And this is when this happened. It was the weirdest thing, because there was a road, just an access road right off of the one that we were on. So we pulled in there, had the lights on the car on, and he kind of swung it down into that coulee, so that the lights would go down to where I was trying to show him where it was at. And we saw it. We saw the horns again, sticking up out of the grass. And I said, I'm sure somebody probably shot that moose. And so we were just kind of sitting there. And I had we had all the windows down because it was the middle of summer, and we're just sitting there, and I started hearing something on the right hand side of me coming up that coulee in that grass, and I'm like, well, there's something down here, so we don't want to walk up on a moose. I'm not on a bear, did not want to walk up on a bear or something that was down there eating that moose. So he backed the car back out into the highway, and I looked over out the window and there was this brown thing coming up the side of the hill. And I went, oh, it's a dog. And because I saw it would look short, because it was just brown hair. And I'm like, oh, it's a dog. And he's like, oh, okay. And I said, no, it's not a dog, it's a cow. Because it kept coming up the hill and it was getting bigger. And I could see this brown. And a second later, this horrible stench just destroyed our car. It was the most disgusting smell I've ever smelled. And I said, it is a bear, because I knew that a grizzly would do that, roll in the garbage that they're eating. And so I said, it is a bear. And he took off. This thing was not a bear because it was running beside our car. I could have reached out and touched it, and I'm looking at legs. Now, that was the craziest thing. And I'm looking at these brownish gray legs and brown hair, and it was beside us, and I could see pads of feet. I could see this like brownish tan, it looked like leather brown feet, bottoms. I see these flashes as it was running. And I told him, go faster. I was just basically panicked at that point because I'm seeing just legs beside me. And I'm not focusing on anything else except for this thing could grab me right now. We're right next to each other. And so he just took off as fast as that car would go. And we basically, on the drive home, were in kind of too much shock, and I was shaking like a leaf. I was literally jello inside. And I just looked at him and I said, did you see that? Because I wasn't sure if he had seen what I had seen. And he said, I don't want to talk about it. And I said, did you see that? Did you see what I was looking at? And he said, I don't want to talk about it. And Jeremiah, I thought about this for a long time. I really did. And I'm like, why will he not talk to me about this? But I've a long time of getting to really know somebody. He was a bully. Honestly, I don't normally talk bad about anybody, but I need the backstory here for his reaction. And I finally figured it out. He's always belligerent and a bully. He was the big man, and he always, got his way or the highway. And that night was the only night I ever seen him show fear. I never saw him show fear at any other point in time. And this man was burned from head to toe. He went through terrible things, and he just gritted his teeth and bared it. But he was scared to death that night. And I think that's why he would never talk to me, because that was the only time he ever showed me absolute fear of something. He wasn't the big man in the woods. And so that was the first time something strange happened, and that was over in the Tobacco Root Mountains. And it was like 4 years later. We moved to another town north of Paradise Valley and hunted in the Gallatin and Custer National Forest. We went to the Absalokas. We were all over the place, Custer and Sweetgrass, all down through there. And we actually took a hunting trip one day south of Livingston on the west side of the highway. And that's the Custer National Forest area there. And you can go out there and hunt elk. So that's what we were doing. I had a 30-06, he had a 270, and we just went out there and we're walking, parked the vehicle and we're walking. It was the middle of the day. We're walking out there. And I was about 50 yards behind my ex-husband, my husband at the time. I kept a little distance because if he saw something, he would basically just freeze and then I would freeze, and that's how he wanted it. And so I was about 50 yards behind him, just trailing him, and I kept hearing something behind me. And I kept saying, "There's somebody or something out here behind me." Because every time you stop and I stop, I hear something, then it stops and then we go. And I said, "This is really unnerving. I don't want to be this far away." And he got annoyed with me, but he said, "Okay." So we kind of get together down into these bottoms. You got the mountains at the top, but then at the bottom, they're pretty clear. They're grassy areas, easy to get through and walk through. And so I kept hearing that, and I said, "Why don't you go, behind me for a minute, and you might hear this." And so we just kept walking, and he said, "Yeah, I hear something, but I'm not sure what it is." But it did not sound like an animal. It just did not sound like an animal. It was just weird. And as we're going along, all of a sudden, the brush to the right of us just exploded, and this huge cow moose came running just out of those freaking bushes and right in front of us and just kept on going. That thing acted like we did not even exist. And that was when I said, "Okay, I'm very uncomfortable with this situation. I don't care what gun you have, there's something happening here," because she didn't even look at us. So something bigger than us is after her. That's my logic. I'm logical and rational. I'm thinking if that thing ain't even looking at us and being worried about it, there's something worse coming up the hill. And just get that horrible, sick feeling like something very bad is about to happen here. But we turned around. We turned around because I did actually tell him I'm not going any further. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to walk into a bear. And that's what I kept thinking to myself. It's got to be a bear. I always blame it on bears first and foremost. But that did not sound like a bear. That moose just didn't seem like, she even cared that we existed. And she just went right past us. But the one weird thing, Jeremiah, I was going to tell you about Pony. Those are the two different places, anyway, I had these weird experiences. But the one thing about Pony is where we lived right at the base of Hollow Top. And so our neighbors had a house beside us they rented, and then their house. On the back of their houses, they had huge motion sensor floodlights, okay, on the back of these houses that were beside us, the two beside us. And they had a 4.5 foot picket fence around their house. And so at night when I was by myself, the lights would just flash on. I'd go look at it, Oh, there's some deer or there's the dog outside or whatever. But occasionally you would go out there to the window and look, and the deer would be screaming through that field and right into their yard where those lights would come on, and then keep on going. And then just a split second later, you'd see a big cat chasing them right through the yard. Those mountain lions up there would come right through the yards after those deer. And you'd see the big 4.5 foot tail flipping above the fence, and you knew it wasn't the dog out there, so you stayed in the house for a while. But that was just honestly in the wintertime, that was almost a normal occurrence. Those deer to run right down that creek, right to the backyards in those big lighted, big lit up places. And sometimes you'd see something chase them, sometimes you wouldn't. But sometimes those deer would come down there so fast and nothing would follow them into the light. And they would sit there in that yard and you could see them shaking. I mean, you could see these deer quivering, but they didn't run like they did when the mountain lions were behind them. They kept going. But occasionally these deer would come down there and get into those yards, those 2 yards, and they wouldn't move. They'd just sit there shaking and nothing come into the light. And those are the questions that I have. Was something out there that knew I'm not walking into those lights? I'll chase a deer, but I'm not walking into those lights because the cats didn't care. You see what I'm saying? They didn't care about a light. They were chasing that deer down. So just weird stuff like that happened up there. The moose, we had another moose. It was a cow moose. When she would drop her twins, she had twins 3 years in a row up there. And when she would drop her twins, she would do it right there in that field with those lights. That's where she would raise those two twins right there in the back by the creek, and where those huge lights were on all night because every time she moved, it turned on. So that's another thing that I question too: was that moose understanding that as long as they're here, they're safe? You know, that also made me wonder that there's something out there that's enormous, that's 3 times as tall as a normal Pontiac car, at least. I mean, because all I saw was legs and feet, and that's the only thing I saw. And so, that's really my experiences, and a couple of the things I have questions about, like, were they responding to something out there that I didn't even I didn't have to believe myself at the time. You know what I mean? But that's that's really what happened, is seeing it right by the car. That was the big thing for me. Is actually I could have reached out and touched it at the time, but thank goodness it didn't touch me.
That is an incredible account. It's very, man, I don't even know how I would handle it. Were the windows down in the car when you were in it?
100%.
Really?
100%.
So it was
all four.
Oh my goodness. So you're in this now. You're saying a Pontiac car. Was it?
It's a Bonneville.
It's a Bonneville. So that
It was like a 1990 Bonneville.
Okay, which is lower to the ground, right?
Yes.
Okay, but you had the windows down. Oh man.
Well, yeah, it's Montana in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the windows down. You don't run the AC.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you had mentioned that you could see the legs, the pads of the feet. Did you notice any other part in addition?
I don't know if I heard anything. I'm makes me wonder, because I thought it was like I say, my brain was triggering what could this be, and it was just getting bigger, and so my brain was going bigger and bigger. And when I thought it was like a cow beside us, I thought I heard like a cow huffing. When a cow runs, they will huff. They'll they labor. And so I thought that's why I thought it was a cow, because it was like shorter 2-3 inch brownish hair, and I think I heard it huffing, and that's why I thought at first, oh, that's got to be a cow. But then it kept coming up the side of the coulee right to he was headed right to us. That was the problem, is that my brain was not working fast enough to go, what am I looking at, until I was just looking at legs.
Right.
And then, like I say, I could see the feet pads, and it was just these enormous legs. I didn't see any arms, hands. I don't know if he had them up or what, but there's not much else. The smell was the worst part. The smell made me I was gagging. It was so bad. And it stayed in that car. It lingered with the windows down, 80 miles an hour. It was horrid.
So you saw it come up the banks of the coulee to the car. You said that you weren't really thinking of what was going on at the time, but do you remember like looking at the creature at that time, like looking at its face or anything like that? Or
no, there wasn't any. It was coming up sideways. So all I was basically seeing was, I think I was seeing like head, shoulders coming up or something as it was coming up the side, but it was coming like, what do you call it? Like at a 35, 45 degree angle coming up that hill as we were turning around and getting ready to go. So it was coming up at an angle almost kind of behind me. So when I'm looking, I'm seeing this brown stuff to my right as it's coming up there. And that's what got me, is we kind of crested together. Basically, it got to the top of there at the same time that we had turned around. So he basically turned around and put me right beside this thing. Wow. When he turned to the left to go back, he put me right beside it. And that's when I'm looking out directly beside me, right at the mirror with this thing beside us running. That's That's my biggest, when I saw it the most, is right there at the mirror when it was running beside us.
At any point, did you get a feeling for how tall it was?
Like I say, it had to be what, at least three times the size of that car. And when I got out of the car, I'm a short person, okay? So let's say 4 feet,
Okay.
3 feet, 3.5, 4 feet. It was enormous. Like I said, all I saw was legs, like right above the knee down. Literally, I could see the knee movement, and but that's as it was right there is what I was looking at out that window, like at 3.5 feet. So
Mm.
8, 9 feet, probably, I would say something like that.
Yeah. Wow. Did you ever go back to look at that area after this had happened? Did you go back the next day, or is just you were staying away from that area?
I had to drive past it every single day to go to work. I didn't have a choice. That, that was the crazy part is I would literally for a long time I would just pray, please just get me past that spot. Please just get me past that spot. You know, that's what I was, and that's stupid because that thing could be anywhere or everywhere. Seriously, it could be long gone. But in my brain, I was like, just get me past that spot. That's all I care about. I don't want to break down there. No, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, to have to probably relive that over and over in your mind daily on the way to work, that would be not a fun time for sure. That area that you lived in, was it a thing where people would ever talk about Bigfoot ever?
Oh, they would talk about their cows missing. Yeah, because there was a couple really big Black Angus ranches right there in that valley. Pony was kind of up in the mountain, and all that entire valley, all the way down to basically Ennis, is nothing but cattle land, grazing lands, things of that nature. And they would talk about their cows disappearing when they have them down in the valley. They would actually just go out one day, feed the cows, the next day feed the cows, and then they're like, wait a minute, where's that cow? Where's 415 or where's 291? You know what I mean? And they were just gone. And so they did talk about that a lot. And I don't know if any of them had their own encounters at any time, but those cattle ranchers are closed mouth about their land. They don't talk about much of anything down there, you know. They don't want to talk about wolves. They don't want to talk about bears. They don't want to talk about anything because if somebody goes after their cattle, the three S's, you know what that is, right? That's kind of how that works.
Yeah,
The three S's:
I don't. Sorry.
shoot, shovel, and shut up.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's how that works. So that's why I say they're kind of tight-lipped around there because that's just the law of the land. So I'm sure they would not want to discuss anything like that somebody might want to protect. Seriously, it's just how it is with land. So I don't know.
Going off of what you've experienced, some brief interactions, have you ever thought to yourself, had to work through like what you think these might actually be?
I would say that they're an animal. Honestly, they're just an animal. I don't think that they're demons. I don't think that they're Nephilim. I don't think they're any of that. I think they're animals, plain and simple. Logic and reason tells us the simplest answer is usually the correct answer, correct? Is that not right? You
Sure.
know,
Yep.
Uh,
That is a logical thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really do. I think they're just animals. Yes, I do believe they're intelligent. I mean, I know that animals are intelligent. I absolutely know that. They can figure stuff out. They probably can mimic us and talk, and they probably have their own communication and their own words and things of that nature. That's fine. I mean, have you seen a murder of crows? One of them learns something, everybody learns it because they sit around and they chatter it. So they just start learning this stuff. I don't think they're stupid animals. I think they're extremely intelligent animals, but I do believe they're still animals.
Being a person that's lived in Montana for so long, I've talked to a few people from Montana, and there's some really interesting things that happen up there. I'm just curious if it's anything you've ever heard. Have you ever heard of people finding like grizzly bears that have had their necks broken in Montana ever? You have?
Yes, Paradise Valley. Yes, Paradise Valley. They actually, I kind of know. I had it in at the time down there with somebody that was involved with that stuff, but they were actually finding these grizzlies dead, and the Park Service, the rangers, they knew about it because that's kind of where the line came from, where the information came from was through through that. I used to do some other stuff law enforcement wise for quite a few years there in Montana, and that's where that came from. But directly from the Park Service, yeah, they're finding dead grizzlies in Paradise Valley. And they're finding dead campers up in Custer National Forest. They're finding like people on one side of a mountain ridge and their entire packs and shoes and everything else 17, 18 miles away on another side of the mountain. I don't know if anybody's ever talked to you about those, but that's something that actually happens here. And they don't know why these people are dead in one spot and all their stuff is somewhere else. If they, and they're just dead.
I believe that was called out in, that's a missing 411 thing with David Paulides, I think. I remember that
he's
in
done
the documentary.
Yep, he's done that. Yep, that's right. And that's not a lie. That is the absolute truth. Like I said, I had some ins with these places, and that is the truth. That's crazy. And I first time I read it, I was like, there's got to be a logical explanation. There's no logical explanation for finding that. There's no logic. These people knew what they were doing out there. They were well prepared. It's not like it was the first time they went on a hike. Something happened to these people.
I remember looking into that myself, and it does not make sense at all. Going back to the grizzlies, did you say that, so they were found dead, but you said their necks were broken as well?
Not only their necks were broken, but their bodies were mangled. They weren't just somebody broke their neck and let them lay there. They were mangled bears. And that's what the problem was, because they're like, a wolf pack is potentially capable of doing this, absolutely capable. If the pack goes after a bear, it's possible. Okay. So we're in the realm of possibility. But who's going to mangle that body and not eat it? That's the thing. If the wolves are going to take the time and energy to kill a bear, they're going to eat it because they've wasted all their energy killing it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Can you you said the bodies were found mangled. Can you, and not to get too crazy, but can you describe like what that exactly means?
That they were just broken, like they were legs broken, they were mangled, like twisted backs and all kind, just mangled, like they had been manhandled to the point of death, just manhandled to the point of they're just mangled and left there. And that's why I say that if they were killed by another natural predator, that predator doesn't take all of that time and energy to kill something like that unless they're going to eat it. That's just natural selection, The energy they spend, they have to get a reserve again. They've got to eat it.
And you're saying that it was just left there.
They're just left there, yes. And they have the pictures of them. That's the thing. I don't know why people are so tight-lipped about this business. If that's happening down in the Beartooth and Absaroka wilderness, that's a playground for millions of people every year. You know what I mean?
In your thoughts, what could break the neck of a grizzly bear?
On the very edge of the realm of possibilities. Okay, this is all I'm going to say. On the very edge of the realm of possibilities, I have seen bull elk and bull moose that could probably do that if they absolutely had to in some weird way with their horns. That's the only thing that would be big enough and strong enough to even attempt to do something like that. There is nothing else out there. That's why I said the wolves are not going to do that. Wolves are not going to do, they can't. They don't have hands. There is no other option. And I'm sorry, but that's the truth. There are big animals out there that are, I think that that's what's happening. I really do. I think that that's what's happening. I think they're being killed by Bigfoot. End of story. There's no other logical explanation.
So I'll tell you, it's something that's come up at random times over the last few years. There's been interviews where I talked to a gentleman in Oregon where he found a black bear that was pretty much mangled by Bigfoot. There was a hunter that was mangled by Bigfoot in northern Alabama in a similar way. It's wild when you start to connect pieces from different parts of the country like that. So I was talking to a gentleman a while ago named Ken Metzger. He's a Bigfoot researcher in Montana. Have you ever heard anything where there could be connections between missing 411 cases and Bigfoot? Besides, we did already talk about the one person that was found on the side of the mountain, but did you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, absolutely. Because once I started connecting the dots myself, other things that I was listening to and reading and seeing were just like absolutely mind blowing to me, thinking that, oh my gosh, this possibly could be one of the biggest shocks to people out there. It really could. It could be one of the biggest things that ever happens, is them finding out that these people that go out here, they're not just disappearing. They're not just, walking off the trail for no dang reason. These people, something's happening to them. End of story. And if that's what it is, then that's what it is. So we need to start. Like I say, I'm based in logic and reality, and that's the most logical explanation for any of it, is actually seeing something like that and putting all these little pieces together that I didn't understand at the time. It does point me in only one direction. It really does. These people are coming in contact with something like that out there, and they're getting the short end of the stick.
Absolutely. Over the years, have you ever heard of any other strange things that have been happening in the Paradise Valley area?
Well, there was only one other thing that happened. It was extremely tragic, but this was over in the eastern side of the state. It was the middle of winter, probably 2008, something like that, 2009. We had a gentleman that we knew. He took off to go hunting on his four-wheeler. Okay, he had his four-wheeler all packed up because he was headed out. He was going to stay out. And he disappeared. And later on, once the ice kind of broke, they found him attached to his four-wheeler in the river. And they were like, what would make somebody who knows this place, who was born and raised here, who has hunted here their whole life, what would make somebody veer off course and drive over a river they know is not frozen? He absolutely knew that was not frozen. And it makes me think, what would scare someone that bad that they would lose all thoughts of safety and drive onto a river they know is not frozen? And his boot got stuck on the bottom peg on his four-wheeler, and it killed that man. He went down with his four-wheeler. Now, I don't know what else would make you that afraid.
Absolutely.
And that's something I've always questioned. Why would a person do that is so intelligent, so good at being outdoors? Why would he do that?
Yeah, the missing 411 events, it's not something that I've looked a lot into, but the things that I have looked into, it does not make sense. And it's just a very scary thing that it does happen. And maybe I'll start to hear more about different things as well.
Right.
If you had the ability, or you could make the decision to would you choose to have an interaction or see a Bigfoot creature again, or is it something that you would rather not take part in?
No, I'm kind of an odd duck, Jeremiah. I don't really get once I think about something and get it in the right place in my head. Once I get it straightened out in my head, I'm pretty logical and really level. Honestly, I was a 911 operator for several years, and everybody told me it was the best job I ever did and got because when crap is happening, I don't panic. Okay, I'm not the panicker. I'm the person that'll stand there and watch it happen and take note of everything that happens. I'm not a panicker. So after I thought about it, I really did. I started listening to stuff and really researching stuff more. And I thought, to me, I think it would be, I think it would be crazy, but I think I would. I want to know this. I really do. I want to be 100% sure. And that I don't like that question mark in my head for so many years that I could never talk to anybody about because I always did think these people will think I'm nuts. They're gonna put me up in the loony bin if I say anything about this.
Hmm.
But I really do think it scared the crap out of me at the time. But after I thought about it, I would actually not mind seeing one from a distance down in a coulee, like I say, or across the mountain, down in the valley while I'm up here on the side. I think it would be really interesting to actually see a full figure, the whole thing, and know what it was. You know what I mean? Instead of have these questions.
Absolutely. It would be very interesting. I haven't had that opportunity yet, but it would be very interesting to be able to actually have a visual for sure. Since you brought it up, I do have a question, and you can choose whether to answer it or not, of course. But during your time working 911, did you ever receive any calls of people that had seen a Bigfoot?
No, I just received calls of the people on the reservation disappearing because I worked in an area
Oh,
that
wow.
also covered two reservations, and there's always a lot of disappearances there. And sometimes they would find the people's bodies in the river. Sometimes they would never find them at all. Sometimes they would find them on the side of a road. Those were the weird ones because there really didn't seem to be any real explanation for what happened to these people. They just disappeared, and sometimes they were found and sometimes they weren't.
Man.
And that was about it.
Wow. That would be definitely, I think, would does take a special type of person to be able to take calls for that. And it sounded like you were definitely well equipped to do that.
Well, I appreciate that. That's really been my most of my entire life. That's been my way I earned my living, is things like that. And so I'm I was hesitant to say anything at first, but then I thought, I'm just gonna talk about it, and then I'm gonna put it to rest. And I'm in Arkansas now. In Arkansas, I did not have any idea about all the sightings here. So now I'm like, oh man, did I go from the frying pan into the fire or what?
Well, Cathy, you may have, depending on where you are. What if you're in northwestern Arkansas? You did.
I did, and
You
that's
did?
unfortunate.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, I get so many reports and people talking to me about Northwest Arkansas, Buffalo River, and then you've got because that's close to Washita, a national forest, southeast Oklahoma. I mean, that whole area is just wild with Bigfoot.
Yeah, yeah. I live right in the middle of the national forest and by Lake Greason. So that it's X marks the spot, basically, Jeremiah.
Oh, so in the Washitas? Yeah, you're there.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the thing. Yeah, this whole place, man? Holy moly. Um, Yeah, this place I won't go anywhere at night I'm not familiar with. And I'm seriously, because I don't want that by myself. I don't ever want to have that interaction by myself. I don't. So I'm I'm pretty picky about where I go here, you know.
It seems like in that area, that subject would come up pretty easily. Has that ever come up in conversation with other people down there?
I've got a couple guys that do a bunch of fishing all over the place. They've actually had little stories that they told me about somebody bothering them, and I'm not going to say anything to these people. I work with these people, and the last thing I want them to do is, like I said, think I'm a nut job or something. So they have these interesting stories about their boat going, what do you call it, when you moor your boat, basically, right, when you go up and land your boat, that they would camp out, do their fishing, camp out, and get up in the morning, and somebody had unmoored the boat and it's gone. And they're like, who could do that? Why would someone do that, and who could do that? And just little things like that, but they've never said anything about seeing anything or hearing anything.
If you wanted to look more into it, you're in the right area for sure. I mean,
That's exactly how I feel. And, honestly, I'm becoming more and more and more curious over time. And I think it's because of just all of the information that's out there. I just actually voraciously, go through information over time, and I just listen to everything I can and read all of this stuff. But I really do believe, honestly, this is an animal. People put so much behind it and everything, and sometimes, yeah, weird crap can happen around them. Absolutely, I'm not discounting anybody's stories. I don't know anything about this. This is just my opinion. Is that they're animals, and they're out there, and people should just be aware, that's a potential, something could happen. Just be careful.
I would really hope, in our lifetime, hopefully we get the final answer, whether that's some specimen or something's captured. It would be great if we could get some final answer, but we will see.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll come around. Eventually, it'll come around. That's all there is to it. The only thing that needs to happen is there actually needs to be a concerted effort between all these different groups. Seriously. People need to say, okay, put all differences aside. We're going to blanket this entire area, whichever area it may be that has the most sightings, or that just blanket the entire area with so many people and so many trail cams, and just do that, come together. That's the only thing I see when I listen to all this stuff. Everybody's doing their own little thing, and that's awesome. But if you really want to make an impact, work together, make it happen, because boots on the ground is what is going to find this. That's what's going to find this.
No, I agree. I mean, first off, focus on, whether it's a certain area in Southeast Oklahoma or maybe Pacific Northwest, but yeah, just make it like almost a search and rescue, but kind of different. Get everyone, but you got to have the manpower behind it, and I don't know.
I get you.
Yeah, it always comes back to if the government's involved or not. That's what it seems to come back to in these chats, but I'm not too sure about that one. So,
Well, that's kind of why I think that way, because that's part of the job that I did was also support for search and rescue, ambulance, fire, all of that. And that's exactly how I feel. You take the map out, you grid your map, you put these people here at this grid, these people here at this grid. That's exactly what my mind went to, Jeremiah, honestly, is more blank search and rescue. Because how do you find a little girl in the middle of nowhere, Custer County, Montana, that's nothing but flat plains and dry scrub brush and all of this stuff? A little girl went missing out there. It took us 3.5 days to find her. She was less than a mile away from home.
oh wow.
But people getting on four-wheelers and horses and walking that area after 3 days that found her. That's how you do it.
Absolutely. Man. Yeah, something to think about, and it'd be an interesting conversation to start having in the community, I think. Cathy, it's been a really enlightening conversation, and thank you for finally sharing publicly what you've experienced over the years. I wish you the best down in Arkansas. Hopefully, well, unless you want it to, hopefully things are pretty calm down there for you. But
Yeah, that's what I'm crossing my fingers about too, Jeremiah. Just don't freak me out too bad, okay? That's all I'm
exactly, yeah, yeah, no doubt.
for allowing me, honestly, for allowing me to just get all of this stuff off of my chest and say, this is what happened. Okay, now I can put it to bed. That's what I needed, seriously.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you, Cathy.
You're welcome. You have a wonderful evening. It's been a pleasure. Take good care of yourself, okay?
Unknown caller.
Oh. Let's go.
Blaylock.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Hey, is this David?
It is.
Is this David Blaylock?
It is.
Did I say that right,
Jeremiah?
David? Yeah.
You did. Blaylock.
Okay, very good. Hey, thanks for calling. You've already filled out the form, right?
I did, yeah.
That's right. Let me make sure that people can hear us if someone in the chat can say, hey, I can hear David, that would be fantastic. Just want to make sure that we're set up right first, David.
No problem.
We're going to wait it out here. Okay, we can hear. Perfect. We're ready to rock. Well, David, I know we were planning on chatting eventually, but I'm glad you called in. I'm going to let you go ahead and have the floor and share what you would like to, and I might have some questions. And also, guys, in the comments, if you've got questions, go ahead and throw those in the comments, all caps, please, and I'll put those in too, potentially. So, David, go right ahead, sir.
All right. Thank you, Jeremiah. So my name is David Blaylock, and I grew up in Northern California, very near where the Patterson-Gimlin film was filmed. And 20 years ago, me and my wife moved here to Coos Bay, Oregon, which is southwest Oregon. And we've hunted elk and deer and bear and everything, camped and done all the hiking and stuff like that. And for like 15 years, we never had any experiences or anything that would lead you to think something was going on until 2019. And in 2019, 2 days before the end of August elk season started, for bow season for elk, me and my wife and my sister, she followed us up there. We had our truck with a camper, overhead camper on our truck. And my sister followed us up in her car, and she had her two little dogs. I mean, my wife had our little min pin dog, and we drove up, and it takes about an hour and a half to get there. You're like 14 miles up a dirt road, a gravel road, and parts of it's dirt. And it's really a thick area, rainforest, a lot of moss on the trees, and you really don't see the ground. It's all just brush and ground cover under the trees and stuff, and big old growth trees. So 2019, I think it was August 26th when we got up there, and we showed up at the camp spot. My sister had never been there before. And like I said, me and my wife had hunted this area for like 14 years straight, camped in a tent for the whole month, and never had anything strange happen or anything. But this trip, we got up there 2 days before the elk season started, and because we wanted to do some scouting and stuff and set up camp. And I had a trail camera up there that I had set up for 2 months. I had it up there 2 months before we got there. And so we got there that evening, kind of started getting camp set up, and I ran and got my trail camera right before dark and came back, and we checked it out, and there was a bunch of elk and deer and stuff like that on there, but nothing else. And about 10 o'clock that first night, me and my wife was kind of making noise, doing some stuff, and my sister was standing there on the road, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. Like I said, it got dark maybe a half hour or something before that. And my sister just like, well, I guess we got company. And I kind of looked at her. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, somebody just made like a banging noise, sound like a tree knock, but it was a bang up on the ridge up there. And I'm like, where did it come from? And she pointed. And I was like, sister, there is nobody up there. There's no roads. There's no trails. It's just like a steep, thick hillside, like a mountainside. And they'll have crews, logging companies will have crews come through after they like log an area, they'll replant these trees. And then after about 10 or 15 years, they'll send crews in there and they'll cut down certain ones to kind of thin it. And they just leave those ones they cut down just laying there. So, I mean, it's like a thicket. Can't even hardly walk through it. And so when she said that, I was like, well, I'm just telling you right now, there's nobody camping up there. And she goes, well, I don't know what that was. And so I'll make like a long story shorter, I suppose. And each day we had stuff like stumps sound like they were being ripped apart, knocking sounds all around us. And sometimes you'd hear like a knock and then like something was running through the brush, like a knock, and you could kind of hear it run off. And each time I was like, trying to write everything off, like, well, it could have been elk, could have been deer, could have been bear. And the knocking could be like elk crashing antlers because it's about the time they start their rut and stuff. I was trying to write everything off as normal sounds you'd hear in the woods. But in the back of my mind, I suspected it wasn't normal sounds that you'd hear in the woods. And so it was the second or third day of hunting season. So it'd been like the fifth day we were up there. My sister rode with us and we drove up this road and we were going to go on this one hunt. Well, while we were driving up there, we see a herd of elk. And those elk, instead of just being like scattered like a herd would be, they were all like corralled in like a circle, all really tight. And they were kind of just walking around each other, like real tight circle. And I thought that was kind of strange, but there was a nice bull in there, and the bull ended up just kind of separating and going like walking off by himself. So me and my wife get out of the rig and we're both hunting, and my sister stayed in the truck with the dogs. And I mean, I just shut the truck off and me and my wife got out and started making our hunt, like walking around to get the wind right and stuff and circling around so we can make the stop onto that bull. And while we were walking down, we couldn't hear it because we're down in the brush. I mean, like I said, the brush is over your head. So you're just kind of trying to sneak through the brush, but it's like kind of rubbing on your head and on your body and stuff. So you couldn't really hear what's going on around you. Well, my sister said as soon as we left the road and got into the brush, she heard three distinctive knocks. One from like one side of the elk, one from the other side, and one from like a triangulation. They were like from three different areas. And while directly after she heard that, she saw us walking into the brush, and she said right behind us, coming the same direction that we had went, she saw a black hairy figure. And she didn't say what it was, but just a dark black figure was walking the same trail that we had walked, and like behind us. And so we'd made our hunt and everything, and we spooked the elk, ended up, and they all ran off. So we went back to the truck after about an hour or something. And my sister was like, did you guys hear those knocks? And we're like, no. Did you guys see what was behind you? And we're like, no. And she goes, brother, sister, I'm telling you, there was something walking behind you guys, following you into those elk. And she goes, whatever it was black, and it was like had hair on it. It wasn't like bald or brown or anything. It was hairy. And we're like, oh, okay. And we've all three had experiences before this. I'm just telling you guys this experience. And so about the sixth night, I think it was, after that, we were sitting around our camp spot, which was just on the side of this gravel road. There wasn't any other. We saw like one or two vehicles up to this point, like a week into it. just a couple vehicles driving by, and we're way up in there. But we're just camped on side of this gravel road on a pullout. So my sister smoked cigarettes, and each time she would get up, I would step up. So let me back up a little bit. Every night before this, we would have our lantern. I had a shotgun, because not for anything but like bears or mountain lions or whatever, just for protection. I'd have my shotgun leaning against our camper, and we'd have a flashlight and our lantern burning, and, you know, just sit out there and just talk and camp before we go to bed. And so this night, we only had a mosquito candle burning, like one of those citronella mosquito candles. And so it was like really dark. I didn't have my gun or my flashlight out. I just had this like little cheap headlamp on, and I had it on a green setting. So when you turn it on, it was green, and it didn't light everything up very well, but you could see eyeshine really well. And so every time my sister would, you know, step up into the gravel, getting out away from me and my wife, so the smoke wouldn't go in our face, she would light her cigarette, and I would just stand up, and this is like 10 o'clock at night again. And so I stood up and shined my light, you know, just to make sure there was no animals or no bears around her or whatever. And so this time she got up, and so I got up with her, and we walked out into the road, and I switched on my light, and she was lighting her cigarette. And I looked directly across the road, because that was the closest trees. And then I looked to my right down the road and didn't see nothing. Turned to my left, and lo and behold, here's this eyeshine. And when I walked over and looked to the left, I had walked about 10 feet away from my sister, I was just checking her surroundings. And I was like, oh, we got eyeshine like that. And my sister's like, oh, serious? And she walked over and she saw the eyes. And my wife was still sitting beside our camper in her camp chair. And these eyeballs were like a foot apart. And if I had to guess the size of them, each eye was like the size of a golf ball, I guess, or something. But there was like the shine around it. And I had my light on green, so I don't know if it was that, but they were like an electric yellowish green reflection in the eyeshine. And they were really close to the ground, like a couple feet off the ground, but really far apart. And so she's like, my sister's like, seriously? And she walked up and saw them, and she was like, just like hyperventilated. And she went walking back to her car really fast and shut her dogs in the car. They were already in the car, but she rolled up the windows in her car so they wouldn't jump out. And my wife had our dog, and my sister, and I'm just locked onto this thing, and it's not blinking. It's not looking away. It's just sitting there, staring right at me. And I couldn't see what I was looking at, but you could just see like a blackish shadow of it, but you couldn't make out a shape. You could just see that there was a body attached to the eyeballs. And so my sister walks back up after she locked her car, and I'm still just staring at it. And it's literally about 30 yards from me, maybe. And it's right on the edge of the road, the gravel road that we're on, but there's like a drop off, and then it's like a flat down off that drop off. And so my mind was thinking it was either a bear or an elk, just like a quick thought. It was like, it's a bear or an elk. But my mind was also saying it doesn't look right, because bear eyeballs are little, they have little beady eyes, and they're kind of close together. And elk can have big eyeballs, and they're kind of spread apart, but the eyes were like a foot or two off the ground, which would mean an elk would basically have to have its head on the ground for its eyes to be down there. And it didn't make no sense. And so my sister walked back up, saw it again, and just like, and freaked out. And finally I was like, babe, I need my flashlight and my gun right now. Because at this point, I'm still thinking it's a bear. That's what I'm kind of thinking. And so my wife, I hear her get up out of her chair and go into our camper, and I can hear her like, dunk, 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 and she was getting the flashlight and the shotgun. And I'm still just standing there. I'm not moving my head, and it's not moving, and we're just locked on each other. And my wife, I can hear her come out of the camper, and she's walking up to my left, and she goes, here you go, babe. And literally she bumped my left arm, and I turned literally a half second, grabbed the flashlight and the shotgun and turned, and whatever it was already gone. Literally a half a second without a sound. And this place is thick rainforest stuff. I mean, just like thick brush. Somehow this thing was off the road and gone in a half a second at the most. And so I was like, where'd it go? Where'd it go? And my sister and my wife's like, I don't know. So I was shining my flashlight around the road, down the road and on each side of the road, and it was gone. So I kind of walked towards it and was shining down through the trees as the best I could, and nothing was there. And I was like, do you guys want me to just, because I'm still thinking bear at this point, but I was like, you guys want me just shoot a warning shot just to make sure you don't come back? And they're both like, yeah, go ahead. So I just put my shotgun up in the air and just, shot a shot off. And we stayed up for like an hour or something talking about it, and nothing happened that night. And so the next morning, instead of going hunting at daylight, I got up and walked down the road just to look where it was. And it had been, whatever it was directly behind this kind of rotted stump. And you could see on the hard packed gravel, you could see like scuff marks, like it pushed itself back off the road over that bank. Like if it, and my assumption was whatever it was laying with its body down off the road, down that little bank, and its upper body was on the edge of the road looking at us around that stump. Wasn't on the stump, it was behind the stump. The scuff marks were about 5 feet behind that stump. And so we discussed it and everything and thought that was really weird. So I'll just fast forward to like day 9 of our hunt. Everything was normal. I mean, like each day something was going on. We could hear stuff, but never saw anything and never had anything weird. Well, night of the 9th, about 9:30, as it's starting to get dark, you start hearing this owl going, whoo, 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 just a classic like barred owl. And my sister was getting her drinking on. Me and my wife didn't drink or nothing. So we were just sitting there listening, and my sister was calling back and forth this owl. And I was like, hey, Cindy, you want me to call? She's like, yeah, okay, go ahead. And so I would do the hoo, 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 call, and me and the owl was talking back and forth for like a half hour. And my sister has this recorded on her phone. And I even joked about, hey, Cindy, it's like on Jurassic Park where the owl's keeping our attention over here while the other thing's sneaking up behind us. And we laughed and stuff about it. So about 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, we're getting ready to go to bed. And my wife was wanting to take our little dog to the bathroom before we got in the camper. So she started walking the dog around on the leash and stuff. And our dog was like nervous and wouldn't go. So I walked over there and like, Peanut, go to the bathroom. Peanut, go poo pee pee. And she just wouldn't. And so my sister was sitting over there by our camper, still calling back and forth to the owl, recording it. And my wife, Dee Dee, she was like, I think Cindy's calling is making our dog nervous. So I said, hey, Cindy, can you stop calling for a minute so Peanut can go to the bathroom? So she's like, okay. Well, she stops recording on her phone, of course. And it's quiet for a second. Our dog still wouldn't go. So I picked up our dog and we were walking over to my sister. And right when I get to my sister, we hear the owl go off again. So we all stop and I'm holding our dog and we're all looking up. Across that flat is a creek. And then it goes up this steep old growth treed ridge. And that was behind our camp. And so that owl was coming right across that flat, right in those trees, like 100 yards away or something like that. But this time when it called, it did like, whoo, 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 and it kind of went down into like this angry sound, like an angry owl. And immediately to the left of that, it did like a coyote, yip, yip, like a coyote yip. And then left of that, this roar that, freight trains and air horns and anything lion, like African lions, if you've heard them at the zoo, that roar they do, roar, roar, that was nothing compared to the volume and the depth and the I don't know how to explain it. It shook your chest. It was so loud, and you could hear the trees ringing like, and then it was like dead quiet. And I just looked up, and I don't cuss very often, but I was like, what the F was that? And my sister and my wife, we're all just standing there like our jaws just gaped open because it went from this angry owl to a coyote yip to this roar. And I was like, we need to go right now. So I literally grabbed my shotgun and my flashlight and stood there shining the direction it came from while my wife went and got her purse and our medicine bag and all that stuff, like our essentials. And my sister was loading whatever she had outside of camp, just throwing it into her car. And we literally left our camper up there for a week. And we just beat feet down the road, and we had to drive past that area. So I told my wife to drive. And when we were going by, this is, like I said, about 10:30 at night, I had my window down with my shotgun out the window and my flashlight shining in the direction just in case it was charging us as we were leaving. And we didn't know, what was going to happen. So we ended up leaving our camper up there for a week. And a week later, we went up there, and I had trail cameras around our camper just because I had them around there. And we didn't get anything on trail cameras or nothing, and our camper was fine. I didn't see any fingerprints or handprints on the windows or anything like that. Everything was normal. So we picked up our camper a week later, and we've never camped at that spot since. We've camped up in those woods, but never in that same spot. So that's kind of my 2019 story.
Whew, David, that is wild. I don't think I've talked to anyone else from that area yet, but I just want to say real quick, we've got about 100 people watching live, and I just want to say thanks to everyone watching live. This is the Bigfoot Encounters live show with Bigfoot Society, and read what's scrolling at the bottom if you've got an encounter to call in with. But David, man, what an interesting, and I was going to ask you about the pattern, if there's a pattern to the knocks, but you already had mentioned that you were hearing like 3. That's a common thread I've heard come up in a few encounters. Like you usually hear 3 knocks. So that's really interesting that you did bring that up, where there's almost like the triangulation of the knocks going on as well. Did your sister tell you how far away or how far behind the figure was behind you guys when you left? There's that black figure that was following you.
She said it literally, like when she lost sight of us, we were probably, I would say, 200 or 300 yards away from the truck when we entered into the brush to kind of make our sneak. And she said she could see us, like parts of us every now and then kind of going through the brush.
Yeah.
And as soon as she lost sight of us, she said from where she could see us going into the brush, like something immediately was following right behind us. Like right behind us. I don't know how close, but yeah, like literally. And so I kind of suspect, this is just speculation, that the reason why those elk were all in a bunch like that was maybe they were hunting those same elk.
Yeah.
That's just my thought.
Wow. That is wild. The part with the eyeshine was very interesting. There's a few back and forth comments that were interesting. Tate had some, he was like, well, maybe a mountain lion. And, I was thinking that too, but I was also thinking that you had mentioned that the eyes were very big and they were super, far apart. But I was like, well, he said it was only a few feet off the ground. So then I'm thinking, well, maybe we're looking at some sort of like spider crawl or on all fours situation, which might explain how you could have the eyes so far apart, but yet so close to the ground. It's a very interesting situation. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, I do. And I thought, and my son was the first one to suggest, here we call them cougars, but they're mountain lions. He thought that. And I was like, well, it's possible, but look at a cat. Look at a cat. Their eyes they're not that huge. They're, pretty good size around, but they're not that far apart. And the weird thing is, okay, that could be an explanation, but explain to me how it knew when I turned and grabbed the shotgun and the flashlight, how at that instant, that is when it was gone. That kind of was, I suspected that was kind of weird, which I suppose if you unlock eyes, that might be when they move. I mean, I could get that too. But the thing, Jeremiah, about it was that this was, like I said, the gravel road. And then where it was right on the lip where it dropped down like about 10 feet. Like the bank dropped down like 10 feet. And then there was a flat. And it could have been like a spider crawler down in that on all fours, or it could have been just laying with its body off the road. and its upper body was on the road, on the edge of the road. Whatever it was, it scuffed hard, packed gravel. You could see like 3 distinct scuff marks where like it pushed itself back.
That's so interesting. And I mean, you guys had some weird stuff going on there. And it's cool that you guys were out there for not just 2 or 3 nights. I mean, you're out there for, what did you say, at least 9 days, and then you headed out?
Yeah, that 9th night we headed out. Me and my wife went camping the next weekend, but in a whole different spot. And I literally, I mean, I'm not afraid of any animals, but literally I was in like cold sweat trying to go to sleep the first night back out camping. I was like, just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. That's what I was thinking.
Right. Oh, that's wild. Let's see here. Looking through to see if we have any questions for you here. Oh, Tate is asking, have you ever been to the Patterson-Gimlin film site at all?
I have not.
Okay.
I've been by it, but not up. I haven't done the actual hike in.
No,
I've been to Willow Creek over and over and over.
Oh, okay, cool.
Willow Creek for a while.
You've got Can Squatch says, what about David's experience of something trying to get into his family's trailer when he was a kid?
Yeah, that's a whole nother long story.
Gotcha.
I could give a short version of it, or I can wait. We can wait until I do the actual thing with you if you want, or whichever you want.
So I would say that maybe let's do part 2, because I want to make sure that you can do all the details and give it, give it all you need to. So let's wait until you come on the show, which I know is coming up. So
it will. I got a story, and I got another one where it's basically where I felt like I grew up, which is in Weaverville, California, in Trinity County, California. And that one is a whole nother experience. So
David, I'm excited to chat with you on the show. How are you? Do you go to any festivals in Oregon?
There's one coming up that I probably will go to. It's I think it's over by Oak Ridge or something like that.
I'll see you there.
Yeah, oh, nice. There you go. Yeah. I think I'll be at that. And we've been to the Bigfoot Museum with Cliff Brackman. His museum. Been there. But really, that's about it.
Cool.
At this point. We're going to LBL, though.
Oh, you're going all the way out to LBL?
Yeah, we're going.
When?
We're going to be there. We're going to arrive in Nashville on the 3rd, and then we're going to actually go out to the LBL on the 4th, and then we're coming back on the 8th. Just
by yourself, or are you going out with a group?
Me and my wife are going there, and there's a whole huge group gonna be there.
Is it the thing that Squatch and Hollers was talking about in the comments?
Yeah, the meet and greet. Yeah.
Oh man, dude, that's awesome! You're going all the way out for that.
We're flying.
Oh man, yeah. And I'm in Iowa, and I'm not even going. Someday.
Oh man, you gotta go.
I know, dude. It sounds like it's not just going to be a one-time deal. I bet it's going to be going on more than once. So.
Yeah, and like with Sawdust East, with Beast TV and stuff, they've done it for years. So it's
okay, cool.
Kind of not maybe an annual thing, but maybe every couple of years they do it.
I got you. Well, David, thank you so much for sharing your one story of, it sounds like many stories, and we'll be chatting again in the future for sure.
You're very welcome, and I thank you for having me on, man.
Yep. Talk to you later, dude.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Just wanted to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed. Share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. The Subtle Lake area of Oregon, Sixes, Oregon, Rainbow, Oregon, McKinsey Bridge area, Sweet Home, pretty much that entire area, the north part, if you get what I mean. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS, and it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.